Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday, June 12th, and you're watching the TXA Market Update. We've got a couple of things to look at. Nothing earth shattering in the news. There's a few talks of AI and some developments with Terraform Labs finally copping to what they're going to pay. Nothing super significant going on. We're still kind of waiting on the ETH ETFs and possible other coin ETFs. Bitcoin, of course, has its ETFs. It's seen inflows. We saw some outflows in just the past day, probably related to some of the CPI things. We know the Fed's decided to keep the interest rates steady, and they don't see more than one rate cut left this year. So the market's kind of cooling off a little bit on that. I don't think it's unexpected, though, either at this time. Bitcoin did bounce a little bit today. So after yesterday, we just a couple of days ago when I did the recording, we talked about this rejection area, what would happen if we rejected and followed through, that some alts might bleed. They did. The last time we checked in, we had 2 stop outs. We'll see if we have any more today. And we'll see if anything is looking strong in this market climate. Bitcoin did almost look like it was going to close possibly with a bullish engulfing candle. Didn't quite make it. It would have to have dipped a little bit lower too, and it hasn't done that either. This could easily, before close tonight, turn into a red candle that goes lower, so we have to be cautious. But it is good to see it's not just falling off a cliff either today. So a little bit of positive encouragement, but not what we want to see just yet. Not strong enough yet. We're not breaking higher highs just yet. ETH, after bouncing down out of that potential flag-like consolidation pattern area there, broke underneath, hooked back up. Is this going to push ETH lower? I know there's a lot of expectations for ETH to hit that 5K area. It looked like it was set up to possibly do it. It still could be. Now, if I invert this a little bit, it makes a little bit of a different picture. And that's a bit of the trouble you get when you're trying to do this stuff in real time. It's very tricky. Things change very quickly on a moment's notice. So if we measure from the bottom up to the top of that, now looking at this shape of a flag pattern, that still gives us the same target area up there at that 1 fib. So still on the table. We didn't break the 786. We did clean up some of this candle, which is nice, that breakout candle. I'm not sure if it's low enough to clean it up. We could get one more dip and clean up some more. That could be it. This could be the support test of ETH on the 786 retracement fib there. Now that we've broken out and hooked back, this is the second time we've broken above that fib level. Will it turn into support? Now, one thing we can check while we're looking at this is we can look for some confluence between these retracement levels. Maybe there's some resistance levels that we're meeting up on a fib extension series coming out of the bottom of this. So if we look at the point where ETH bottomed, the first real part we see any kind of money come in is here. Now this is a bit of sell-off, and I'm interested if I get a different picture if I go to the 3-day on ETH here. You can see that sell-off peak there. There's a little bit of buying, and there is some buying right here before that sell-off. Nothing super significant on the larger time frames in terms of buying that I would necessarily want to pull an extension fib from. You can see right here, there's a little bit. You can see right here, that's one. So I do see some buying in that one. So if I just want to check just to see if I get any confluence, signs of confluence here, this is a point where after chopping for a bit, they kind of bounced up, they put some buying into it, and then we kind of pulled back a little bit. So there's a potential move there, a push up with a pullback that we could look for signs of anything important. Now, immediately, and if I don't do the pullback, or I just pull back to that first dip of it, maybe I can look at just that first leg in that pullback, I start to see some important levels. And you can kind of see it's not perfect. But if you kind of look for where that selling off leg of money is down at the bottom, I can zoom in a little bit more and show you what I'm talking about here. So here's that green leg up, and you can see some significant inflows of buying there within this greater structure after a push down. And you can see when we kind of tap out locally here, and this is where some selling comes in after. There's a more significant one here. So you kind of, am I going to pull back to here? Am I going to pull back to here? Well, you really have to look at what makes sense from a standpoint of a move higher, because this is an extension film. I'm looking for kind of a bullish type of move here. Now, if I've just pulled that first retracement coming off of that leg, immediately I see some important hits that start to make sense. So for me, that makes the most sense on that extension there. And if I look up, there's a 2.6 there. So it makes sense to get rejected. Now, where I run into trouble trying to do this in real time is, do I even really need that pullback? Because sometimes in crypto, it makes more sense not to have much of a pullback on the end of that, or even to go flat. And if I don't do as much of a pullback, now I see some really important confluence there. I hit the 2.6, I pull back to the 1.6. I didn't quite break the 2.6 yet, but I'm pulling back and tapping this 786 retracement. That puts me at a new all-time high, up not quite where people are talking about 10K for ETH, but pretty high up there. And it would make a lot of sense. And maybe it doesn't quite go as high as people want, and it doesn't give them the exit they're looking for before it pulls back down to earth. So I'm going to leave that there, because this, I really like the way they break these levels and then it becomes support and they go higher. They break this level, the 1.6, they reject the 2.6, they build support at that 1.6 fib level, and now they're looking to break through. This makes a lot of sense to me. There's probably a similar leg on Bitcoin, and look at that. That's the one we pulled already. And then the question is, should I have pulled it from this first part? Would it make more sense pulled from this first part and pulled back? Because that's where ETH makes the most sense. And this too does make a lot of sense. You can see breaking above the 2.6 and pulling back. You can see breaking above the 1.6 and it turning into support. You can see a lot of important fib hits down here. So, whether I'm looking at that or coming all the way back down to that, now that I found that leg in ETH and I see it on Bitcoin, this kind of makes more sense to me. This looks like they just slipped off the earth, cleaned some candles out, and then went right back to doing what they were doing. If you didn't have that lower low there, that's where you would have pulled that retracement to. And it almost looks like this is a second leg of money. You can see that influx right there. So then you almost have to wonder, well, is there some confluence here in this leg coming in? There's that first, I'm looking down here at the candles. There's the first sell-off is right in there. But really, they coast all the way up here before kind of a pullback that makes a lot of sense. And if I use that fib series and we give it a different color, no, I've got white in here already. Let's do some kind of a light blue. There we go. That makes more sense. I do see some confluence up there, right about 85 to 89. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're looking at that move. So then I start to kind of, do I need the whole leg of pullback? Am I missing maybe that it's just going up to there and pulling back inside of it? Does that make, and that starts to make sense, because immediately I can see the 1.6 pull back to the 1, break out of the 1.6, stuck at the 2.618 resistance, and I'm trying to get up to that, over that 100K level for the next mark up. And you can see some important hits on both the red and the blue now, especially where they overlap. So I'm going to leave that there just to see kind of how this plays out. If they break above this 2.6, is this 3.6 the next resistance that we kind of bounce back and forth between? That would make a lot of sense to me. Break out of 72, get up to about 90, have a sell-off initially so you can hook some shorts thinking that's a new top, and then you do the blast, the final blow-off top. We'll see. I tend to favor the bigger bottom fibs for now, so I'm just going to stick with those. But that was a fun little dive into some of those inner workings of this larger leg of money here on Bitcoin, and the way that it kind of is playing out, much the same way that you can find over here on ETH. So just a little bit of comparison there. Let's see what the DXY did. Okay, finally some shutdown on the DXY. Not to be surprised. I mean, we talked about those rates are staying the same. They're definitely not cutting the rates. And so I think the DXY maybe on the news that rates aren't getting cut, lost a little bit of strength there. And also the CPI reports came out, and we'll look at those in just a minute. But while the DXY went down, Bitcoin went up. And you can see the DXY as it pulled back, if you go down the lower time frame, there was that initial push, and then for the last 8 hours, pullback. There's that initial push for the last 8 hours, pullback, except Bitcoin's trying to turn it up in response as the DXY cools off and the markets shut down for the end of the day on the larger equities and go into after hours here pretty quickly. The DJI finally cooling off on some red. Let's go to the daily there. So after massive all-time highs, a little bit of cool off. The S&P blow off still. Higher highs, all-time highs on the S&P. And the markets rejoice. It's never coming back down, except there's a gap right there and a little bit of one there and even one back there. And we know markets don't just go straight up forever. Bitcoin dominance down a little bit today. So with Bitcoin going up and dominance going down, that tells me alts should have recovered pretty nicely. Hopefully some of our trades that are surviving got a little bit of breathing room from that. Robinhood poking up in the air there, a bit of a possible wedge sticking up that could turn to a reversal, but it's a larger ABC-like structure. Where will it stop? We shall find out soon. Coin tapping the top of that larger uptrend channel. Nvidia, I mean, just massive. Insane. It's now got all this wick up here to clean up after that 10-to-1 stock split, a bit of a sell-off immediately following that. And now, who knows? Nvidia is now the third largest company in the world, 3 trillion market cap, behind only, I believe, Apple and Microsoft, but it is eyeballing that #1 spot. Block looks more and more like it's trying to do some kind of a actual right shoulder now that they've closed this gap. So we'll see how that plays out. And Amazon sticking straight up in the air. Ooh, will that make a head and shoulders pattern or even like a triple top type of thing? Or is this just a consolidation for the higher move? There's a gap down there. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's check in with the news before we check in with our trades. Bitcoin ETFs saw 200 million net outflows in Fed CPI jitters today. So the 11 ETFs recorded 200 million outflows on Tuesday. That was yesterday. The highest since May 1 figures of 580. And the outflows are likely due to traders de-risking ahead of the CPI and Fed rate decision. So I'm curious how the ETFs did today. So net flows, Bitcoin ETF today. Total net flow daily chart, spot Bitcoin ETF. There we go. Let's see. Here we are, the 11th. So we didn't get today's yet. It hasn't closed, so they haven't posted it yet. So we'll have to wait and see. Do we get some inflows today? Who knows? Possibly. Or does it kind of just fall flat now that people have gotten out of the way? That's probably more likely. Crypto and AI could be a 200 trillion mega trend, according to Bitwise. I don't think they're off. I think AI is here to stay, and it has a lot of room to grow and expand. I think it is going to be potentially bubble-like in the way we saw .com bubble, but maybe not as widespread. There are some actual use cases and not just vaporware. Just like in .com, some companies survived and thrived when 95% of them crashed and burned. There was that 5% that did well. AI probably will be similar. Nvidia, one of the reasons why it's doing so well is it makes the best, most advanced supercomputer chips for AI, and it is going to dominate that arena with no end of its market dominance in sight. So I expect that trend to continue. US CPI was flat in May, beating expectations. Bitcoin rose to 69.2K. So softer inflation data could prove a boon to digital asset prices. Maybe people start to chill off a little bit and think they can move some funds into crypto. It says that the core CPI, which excludes food and energy, rose 0.2% in May, better than forecast for a 0.3 rise. Year over year, core CPI rose 3.4 against expectations 3.5. So just underneath expectations. Nothing to get very excited about. But certain global other banks have started to lower their rates. The European Central Bank did cut their rates. So did the Bank of Canada, and that led the DXY to go up even higher, is what they're arguing here. And I understand the argument for it. It probably makes sense in the bigger picture, but I think the DXY has some underlying things going on as well that we're going to see kind of dominate that scene pretty soon. The Fed sees just one rate cut this year. Bitcoin gives up session gains. So kind of in the afternoon after they confirmed this, Bitcoin gave back a little bit of what it saw in the beginning of the day, but it's doing fine right now. 68,146. It dropped to 67, so it's even given it's recovered a little bit of that give up even since that article came out. Protocol Village Aether for sourcing GPUs launches decentralized cloud on Ethereum. So they are trying to get GPUs to do intensive tasks like AI model training and gaming, and they are using a decentralized cloud compute network on Ethereum mainnet in order to try and get people to participate. So there is some node interplay going on there, and it's some interesting stuff. I'm not going to go into the other notes there about Ripple and some other things. Terraform Labs Do Kwon agree to pay SEC a combined $4.5 billion in civil fraud case? How does he still have that much money after that massive thing? Why is it not all gone? That's a very interesting situation. The settlement agreement, which was filed Wednesday, would permanently ban Quo and Terraform Labs from buying and selling crypto asset securities, including all the tokens in the Terra ecosystem. I'd like to see you actually stop them. Of the $4.4 billion that they must pay to the SEC, Quan must pay at least $204 million out of his own pocket. Not a very much. The steep penalty is slightly lower than the SEC's first settlement offer of $5.3 billion, but much higher than the virtual slap on the wrist, $1 million civil penalty, and no disgorgement or injunctions. So they are trying to take the teeth out of Terraform Labs by taking all of its money. I wonder who gets to keep it from the SEC. That would be interesting to dig into. Now, before we go and we let Bitcoin travel on for the rest of the week, hopefully the DXY continues to cool off, and hopefully we can eke out the top of this structure and start some kind of a rally in the weeks ahead. Let's check in with our trades and our top charts. So 1 inch, there's that rebound. I suspect we're going to see it everywhere. You can see green across the alts today. There's a rebound on algo, so getting back towards our entry point. Nice to see it happen right at that important support level. So that is a very positive sign for me. I think some people that maybe got in here gave up because if you got in at the top there, you're upside down almost 50% and you are hurting. Cello almost stopped us out, recovering a little bit of room today. Now we're upside down just about 10% in our entry here. Again, a lot of people cleaned out from that trend line, a lot of stops triggered, but that 618 held. So as long as it continues to hold, now that wick is cleaned up, we could see a return back up above that trend line. Doggy there you can see bouncing up towards the 382, but a lot of alt life. Here's Engine after eking out of our stop, getting to the very bottom of this level. And I talked about this, how tempting Engine is at this very bottom level, even though we just got nicked out. It's very tempting to come in here and pick up some Engine at 23 cents because now you can put a 20% stop way down there below its lowest swing low on this chart for a very long time since 2021. And you have a really good shot at some kind of a potential right shoulder in this larger potential head and shoulder structure. Oops, let me get this really solidified here because it's very obvious to me what potentially could be taking place. It doesn't have to be. And really, head and shoulders are supposed to be more flat. So more like this across that line there. But you can see shoulder, head, shoulder. And if they come back up and break, this Engine could go on a massive run to new all-time highs, much higher than $4.80. And I do believe Engine could do that, but we have no guarantee it's going to happen now. So we did take one stop out last week, so let's get this out of the way. Now, if you didn't take Engine yet, this is a really nice place to possibly take it. That is assuming you're under the impression that Bitcoin isn't going to continue lower and push everything below their bottoms. So Engine, if it goes lower than this 20 cents here, we have no way of knowing for sure where it's going. It could come all the way to the 618 at 13 cents. Certainly, I don't want to hold it from 23 to 13 cents. I don't want to take a 40% hit on whatever position I decide to enter here. But this is one of those charts that we did go risk-free on. And in theory, when we went risk-free, you had some Engine sitting on the side. You could have used to cover your losses already. You could have used it as leverage for this trade to enhance your risk. You could now use that to take your risk on this entry if you didn't before. I don't tend to like to get right back into things after getting stopped out, but because I know not everybody took that entry, and if you didn't and you've been waiting for Engine more patiently than I was on that pullback, hoping that that was it, and we did a higher shoulder with a slanted neckline, this is your kind of last chance before the bottom falls out from under you. So you could potentially, right now with Bitcoin where it is, take an entry here on Engine. I knew it was going to do that. Get back to a reasonable viewpoint here. There we go. And put a 20% stop on it. You are well now outside of the lowest low. You've got a much better entry than the last time we tried this. Get this right on the candle for today. Yep, that's where I want to be. And you've got a shot at even more percent if they go back, even if they just go back up to the top of this potential neckline here. That's 124%. That's a 5-to-1 risk to reward. Fantastic risk to reward, especially structurally speaking, where we are. We're sitting right on the 50. We never really gave up that larger retracement 50. This is the big picture going all the way back to 2018 on Engine here, 2017 really, before Engine peaked at that 2017 all-time high and then continued to higher cycles. Now it's pulled back all the way to the 50 fib on the logarithmic chart, and it has held it for the most part in the big picture. We're right underneath it right now, and that's where they get a lot of people stopped out on charts like this. They just stopped us out. We took a 2% hit. I'm willing to give Engine one more shot. If you didn't give it a shot yet, this is as good a spot as any to give it a shot. You have to understand, though, that if Bitcoin flushes the market, this could get flushed out like anything else. ERG, same kind of thing. They flushed underneath the trend line. Where they are now, you could hide all the way outside that swing low with a 20% stop. So if you like ERG and you weren't in it yet, you could potentially get in this one for that move back up inside this trend line, but it's going to take the market going to higher highs on Bitcoin for that type of a move. INJ break. Is that a hook, or is that a bit of cleaning all this breakout up and now we get to go higher? Could be a bit of an A, B, C to finish this off. So we'll keep an eye on this one. They didn't break in that support and it seems to be trickling up. Here IOTX starts to look like a head, a shoulder, head, and a shoulder. But again, it's sloppy. That's what makes all of these tricky, because if this is a head and shoulder, the right shoulder is almost double, like a double shoulder, and the neckline is on an incline, which is atypical. You generally at the end of a cycle see it flat. It's in a reversal spot after a 5-wave cycle. It's hard to look at 5 waves in that right now on the fly. So I just know that it's possible, but it looks sloppy and it doesn't have to play out that way. Here is Jasmy. So they've broken out of that sideways move. They pulled back off of this 50 fib on the larger picture. The 50 fib is going to be the hard one to break. From our original entry, that is 10 times. So if you sold half on the way up and kept half, you would have 5 times that half from your original entry. Let me give you a quick example. You put $1,000 in when we took this first trade. You sold out here, got your $1,000 back, had half your position, worth $500, worth its own $1,000, excuse me, but originally bought in with half or $500, so that doubled. Now that $1,000 will be worth $5,000. So you 5 times the half you held on to, and you got your initial capital out, so the rest was for free. That's an ideal situation in this type of market. That's what we're looking to replicate. KDA almost stopped out, not quite stopped out. You can see a little bit of bounce trying to survive on this important support level here. This was that level I was worried about looking to the left. I want that to hold, and it's good to see some green come alive. A lot of these trades now, a lot of these alts are at levels where this is the bottom support. If you didn't take KDA before, you could easily take it now with a wide 20% stop. A lot of these trades, a lot of these alts are at spots where you could take trades, and as long as they hold and the market doesn't melt down on you, you've got good potential. Komodo, I would not be surprised to see this chain go all the way back up to $20 again at some point in the future. This is a massive bottoming with almost like a triangle or a wedge. This is after coming all the way, a logarithmic retracement from bottom to top, all the way to the 618 and holding it strong, and now looking to break the 50. And if it does, it could be a massive run. So if you haven't taken a trade on this one, right now where it is in this triangle, and with that moving average, if Bitcoin continues higher, this could be a good potential entry with a 20% stop below. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on there so we can track it. Oops, I grabbed the extension again. Keep doing that. You don't have to take this. This is not financial advice. This is just me tracking Komodo to see, because it's got a massive, massive risk to reward right now. 20 to 160. So you're talking about a 5, 6, 8 to 1 risk to reward ratio from here, and you're hiding behind a moving average, and it would have to take a pretty hefty hit now that Bitcoin has pulled back, and it didn't do a whole lot. It held its structure. KNC, you can see, is chugging its way back up to the top of this accumulation zone, so looking healthy. Link bounced off of our entry point. That's nice to see. So we're doing pretty good at that one. We couldn't have done it better. Loop ring, this one looks like it did stop out on us. So if you got the loop ring entry where we were at, they went all the way down outside that trend line and stopped us out. They came all the way almost back to that 0 fib. Makes me wonder if this is off just a little bit. Like that. And so just like our other trade that got close, that came all the way back, this one we got stopped out on. You could technically try an entry now, but this one is not my favorite. And now that it's broken underneath, I worry that this one could drop its bottom out from under it. But you can see, just like the others, there's a potential shoulder, a potential head. Is this the right shoulder? I mean, a lot of these charts are set up like this. So even though we got stopped out on loop ring, if you didn't take this trade, it's in a better spot for you. And this could be a potential entry. So for me right here, I'm going to put this like this, where it stopped out. And I am going to just watch and see how it plays out. If I didn't have a trade in already that got stopped out, I would potentially take an entry there, but that one is dicey where it's at. Litecoin, you can see making a very large triangle. Can it get to the point and break out with Bitcoin breaking out? Possibly, but it's got work to do. Metal came all the way back down inside this accumulation area. Well, I shouldn't call it that. This is more of a support area on the way out off the bottom. We tapped it several times, and we noticed it on the way down multiple times. So it's an important area, but I can't necessarily say it was being accumulated in. A lot of times when you go sideways, you can see the accumulation underneath, but they pulled back all the way down to about the middle point between the 50 and the 382. They've come here before and bounced back up higher. We'll see if they can do it again. That's going to be interesting. Neo, this one did stop us out too. So 2 more stop outs so far, Loop Ring and Neo taking our hits. This is just what you do when the market pulls back. Looking at where it is, if I look left, it looks like they broke into that top of that structure. I didn't want to see them do that. That's why I had this orange line here. We got in hoping they wouldn't get 20% below it, but they did. They're bouncing off those 236 areas. This could be where Neo starts to bounce back, because looking left, really, this is kind of the bull piece there. This is where we really got halted. This is where we broke through and found resistance, got stuck, tapped through but couldn't get through, got stuck at. Now this is a support level. So again, this is hard, guys, because some of these trades we got in early hoping they would develop, and now they're at spots where they're even nicer than before to enter. But a lot of times if you got out, it's not good practice to get right back in. If you didn't get Neo before and you thought it was too high of an entry, now you got a potential entry on Neo. Here is Poly, so still kind of sticking up in the air, nothing too exciting there. Power didn't stop us out. Love seeing it on that 236 and holding. So it didn't break the 236. That's a positive sign. It is underneath that trend line. Like some of the others we've got stopped out on were the ones we got in on the other side of this trend line. So the hope here now is that we flushed these out. We continue to see this volume that is divergent from price. So price is pulling back, volume's decreasing. That means that strength of the pullback is weakening. There's almost no volume in this pullback here. It looks like Bitcoin pushed us around. Hopefully that is it. We will survive this dip and we get our nice big run on power that is set up. We're still well inside this wedge for that massive run up to a potential 10 times down the road. We just might have to weather a little bit of nastiness before we get there. Sand holding that 618 there, but nothing too exciting. Synthetics, SNX, we bounced a little bit off of that line there that was kind of resistance. That's about where the point would meet of that triangle there. So hopefully that's it. And now we can make our way back up into the green. So 2 stop outs, a lot of alts though, looking like they're at support points. And if Bitcoin doesn't really melt down here, if we just kind of get sideways, hanging out up in the air like we did before, and we make our way through and we can pop it, those alts have a reasonable chance at some possible good moves. We can't say for certain which way Bitcoin's going to go. We don't know how the DXY is going to play into things later this week, but now we have the CPI report. We've survived the lack of a rate cut. I think we're in a good position for a possible breakout. And another thing I see just looking at this, I don't like to get too excited because it is very early, but you can see there is a little bit of potential flag structure within this situation here. And if that is a flag forming and we break out the bottom of it, that could be the local potential to make us shoot our way up towards that somewhere near 90K mark. We've got the big flag pattern there, and as we've gone more sideways, maybe we've got a little bit lower to shoot, but somewhere in this area, we can start to see a case to be made for Bitcoin to reach two. So we will leave that up here between our low and our high guess from our possible local flag and larger flag patterns there. Can we do it? We'll have to watch and see how Bitcoin plays out the rest of this week and into the summer. Thanks everyone for watching. I will see you all later this week on the TXA Market Update. Stay safe, protect your capital, stick to your plans, honor your stops, don't revenge trade. But if you see that some of those alt trades are at important support levels and you feel compelled to take those entries, you got to do what your inner trader tells you got to do so that you can calibrate it as you get the market to show you the way. Thanks everyone for watching. I will see you next time on the TXA Market Update.